What's up, metal and heavy music fans? It's Flight of Icarus again with MetalTrenches.com, and today I have a review of CARNIFEX and their new album Graveside Confessions via Nuclear Blast Records. And hey, if you like to be kept up to date with the best and brightest metal bands and albums from the underground and above, then stick with me by hitting that subscribe button down below. CARNIFEX is a San Diego, California deathcore band that has been building a strong fan base since around 2005 with albums like Hell Chose Me and Until I Feel Nothing making the Heatseekers charts. Personally, I really love 2019's World War X and consider it one of the best deathcore albums of a very strong year in the genre. So I was interested to see if they could keep that strong momentum going into Graveside Confessions. The album starts off pretty strong with some of the best material face forwards. CARNIFEX kicks things off with the title track, which has some serious groove woven into hooks that really got under my skin. That main guitar riff is both fun and memorable and is really just the beginning of what this track has to offer. There are many twists and turns from the basic chuggier parts to the more Dimmu Borgir-esque organ elements. Likewise, the vocals go through some impressive acrobatics in range, culminating in that big moment around the 3-minute mark that I'm sure is going to make live audiences go absolutely berserk. Pray for Peace is another standout with its ominous, blackened atmosphere colliding head-on with more djenty, hypnotic grooves. Definitely picking up on even more Dimmu Borgir vibes with the synth elements on this one. But interestingly, the big, punishing conclusion has more of a Fear Factory vibe than anything else. Seven Souls, on the other hand, has some pretty apparent bleeding through and Anal Nath rock in its DNA, and how the symphonic elements mix with the violent, pummeling riffs and vicious vocal delivery. The distorted blackened shrieks in particular are incredibly harrowing, even if the lyrics are a little bit corny, admittedly. Honestly, as someone who goes all the way back to Portrait of the Goddess, I gotta say that I'm into it. From here, though, to be perfectly honest, things start to taper off a little bit for me. I do appreciate the more melodic touches on the pretty anthemic Cursed, and I think that this one is going to be a crowd pleaser live, but it also just strikes me as sounding a little overly familiar. It was also around this point that I started to notice that the mix sounds kind of muddled. There's a lot going on in certain places, and it all starts to get just scrambled together. It's possible that it was just the copy I was listening to or the equipment I was using, but I listened in multiple settings with different sound systems. Still the same issue. In any case, the songwriting only gets more generic from me from here. Despite some neat little touches, I have trouble even maintaining focus on tracks like Carry Us Away, Cemetery Wander, and Talk to the Dead. They've been growing on me some during listening sessions, but afterwards nothing really sticks with me. Cool guitar effect here, nice melodic bridge here. They aren't bad by any stretch, but they just aren't that interesting to me either for whatever reason. It's like asking how one particular wave felt after spending hours in a storm at sea. The string-heavy intermission of January Nights also just struck me as unnecessary and out of place despite its docile tones. I find myself mostly skipping it at this point. I could really go on track by track, but I'd honestly be mostly repeating myself. There are some standouts later on, like Countess of Perpetual Torment and Alive for the Last Time, but even these still fall victim to not offering enough to be truly memorable. But if there is a song that I do have a lot of thoughts on, it's Dead Bodies Everywhere. Now understand, I love a good cover song. Especially one that is transformative enough that it transcends the original. Think Johnny Cash's rendition of Hurt. On paper, a deathcore version of a Korn song actually sounds pretty rad. Perfect, even, considering that deathcore has undeniable roots in the groove of nu metal. Unfortunately, in execution, it just does not pay off. Part of it is in the mix and kind of over-polish of CARNIFEX's approach that kind of washes out the best moments of the original. You don't feel the same impact of Fieldy's bass or Silveria's drumming. Probably even more to blame, though, you're replacing one of the most dynamic and imitated metal vocalists of all time with standard scream technique. Scott is a great frontman in his lane, but Jonathan Davis, he is not. Now, you can just chalk this up to me being such a fanboy of the original if you want to, but I really feel like objectively this just does not work.
No, sir, I don't like it.
If anything, every time it comes on, it just makes me want to queue up the Korn version. There's also a few new versions of old tracks tacked on to the end of this album. They're fine, but this just brings me back around to one of the biggest issues that I have with Graveside Confessions overall. In addition to not being all that interesting, it's way too long, which only makes that point all the more obvious. Part of why World War X was so great is that it clocked in at a lean and mean 36 minutes, and almost every track was a banger. Single-worthy even. Graveside Confessions, on the other hand, including those redone tracks, is over an hour.
It is evolving, just backwards.
It's just too much, especially for a pretty standard deathcore album. Were it more progressively focused, maybe it would work, but this is just not that kind of music, if you ask me. Speaking of which, let me start wrapping things up and saying I don't hate this album. It just feels like a big step back from the previous effort. Turning to my scales, I give it an 8 for enjoyability. It's a banger in some places, and even the parts that are more generic are still consistently entertaining. I give it an 8 for musicianship. The performances are pretty solid. It's more so the songwriting and execution that feels a bit lacking. And I give it a 7 for innovation. Average deathcore that feels like a relic amidst more forward-thinking bands in a genre that is much more competitive today. Maybe if this had come out in the 2000s, I would really love it, but as it stands in the 2020s, there's just better stuff out there. So a 7.7 overall and a C+ for CARNIFEX and Graveside Confessions. Y'all let me know down in the comments what is your favorite CARNIFEX song or album, and don't go anywhere because I got plenty more videos coming right after this one. There may be some popping up on screen right now. You can check out my favorite deathcore albums of 2021 so far in particular. But that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.